A little bit of a history of my brother, Tim Clough, who is turning 70 this month. One Sabbath day when I was 5 years old, almost 6, within 2 months, our family doctor came to church and asked my father to fill in for him as platform elder that day. It seems as though he needed to be at the hospital because one of his patients was delivering a baby. And he needed to deliver it. One of his patients was having it, and he needed to deliver it. Knowing that Mom and Dad had been wanting another baby, he said, "By the way, this baby is going to be put up for adoption. Do you want it?" Want it? Of course they wanted it. I remember Doc Bacon driving into our yard later that afternoon with 2 sailors in the back of his car that he'd picked up alongside the road. "It's a boy," he announced. A few days later, we went to the hospital to pick up our new baby boy. I distinctly remember that day and going to the hospital to bring you home, Tim. My family named him Timothy Warren Clough. The Warren was after our favorite family doctor, Dr. Warren Bacon. Funny how a person remembers just little snatches of things, not a whole incident or story, but just a snapshot in your mind. I remember going to the room where you were sleeping, Tim. The sun was shining through the window and was casting its golden glow on you. And you were just sleeping so peacefully. And this is a picture I have of you as a newborn, just sleeping there quietly. I remember Mom saying that you were such a good baby that they had to tape a marble to the back of your head to help you have a nice shaped head because you just didn't move. You would have stayed in the same position all the time. You were a beautiful baby. You had lovely soft curls all over your head. And Grandma and Grandpa came from Wisconsin to see their grandchild when you were a little over 2+ years somehow. Mom and Grandmother and I had gone to town to do a little shopping. While we were gone, I don't know who suggested it, but Dad and Grandpa took you into town to get a haircut. They wanted you to have a little boy haircut, not a girly haircut. Mother was heartbroken when she came home and found you sleeping in your crib, and all your beautiful curls were gone. They never really grew back. Do any of you ever wonder how Tim dresses so neatly all the time? Well, it wasn't a learned thing. I don't think we are necessarily slobs, my other brother Jim and I, but we were a bit more casual. With Tim, it was just something inbred in him. He always wanted to be neat and clean. As a toddler one time, Mother tried to put some socks on him that had a little tiny hole in the toe. He was to have nothing to do with that. I'm wondering now if he ever really got dirty. I can't remember it. He always liked looking like his clothes were clean and pressed and his hair combed. And it has carried over into other areas of his life also. You ever notice how he takes such good care of his lawn that a weed wouldn't even dare grow there? Or how he takes good care of his vehicles and not one of them would dare drop a drop of oil on his carpeted garage. He wants things to look nice. When Patrick asked me to take some old pictures, or send him some old pictures, I had to look through 2 boxes of things to see what I had, although I was pretty sure I had sent most of them to Tim. But I think If he'd have asked Tim to send him some old pictures, he would have had them right away because Tim is so organized. A favorite thing of Tim's was soda pop. When we were young, we didn't often get a lot of pop. I remember when traveling, we would ask Dad when we stopped at a gas station for gas, "Can we have some pop, Dad?" "I'll be the pop," was always his response. He did often share gum with us, but we only got half a stick. One time, Mom decided she had to see her parents. They lived in Wisconsin, 3 days' journey away, and Mom would be the only driver, as Dad needed to stay home and earn the money. Mom took Aunt Verna along for company, but Aunt Verna didn't drive, and I wasn't yet 16, so I didn't have a driver's license. Mom needed to keep the peace, and it was hot besides, so we got a lot more pop than usual. As you can see in one of the pictures I took along the way, Tim couldn't even put his pop down long enough to have his picture taken. Growing up, we had lots of natural toys. In Port Orchard, for instance, we had a natural sandbox. You could go outside and the whole side of the hill was sand, and we could play in it. We lost a lot of Mom's spoons out there. We were at the end of the road, so there was no danger of getting run over by a car. There were woods to walk in, and Dad always built a swing wherever we went. There was even a hollowed-out tree with natural notches in it. Since it was beside the garage, we could climb up on the roof. I don't know if Tim ever tried that. He was still fairly young when we left there. Later in the city, Seattle, there were parks to play in, and bikes to ride, and lakes to swim in, and neighborhood kids to play with. And the zoo wasn't too far away. In those days, one didn't worry about kids playing outside without much supervision. We just needed to tell where we were going and to check in once in a while. Of course, Mom fixed us 3 good meals a day, so we were always home at mealtime. After church on Sabbaths in the summer, Dad often took us to the Pilchuck River, where we could wade and explore while he rested. Sometimes, like on the 4th of July, Dad's family would all get together for a picnic at Silver Lake. When the extended family was all together, there was enough of us to have a game of workup. Softball, for those of you who have never played a good game of workup. As we grew up, there was also work to be done in Dad's business. Stamping egg cartons, candling eggs, peddling eggs, etc. But when we finished our chores, Dad would take us to Green Lake to go swimming, and we would ride the bus home afterwards. I think we moved to Seattle about the time Tim was ready for 1st grade. I'm told, though I never saw it, that he was smitten with a little girl that sat right in front of him. He leaned over and kissed her one day. The teacher thought to just ignore it, but too many little 6- and 7-year-olds had seen it, and hands were raised all over the room to report such a scandalous action. While in grade school, Tim decided he would like to be in the band at Seattle Junior Academy. He took drum lessons and learned to play. This was the beginning of a lifelong love of playing the drums. He continues his passion to this day. By the time he was 8, I was 14 and going away to academy, boarding school. From then on, I was only home in the summertime. There were many things that I missed out on knowing about his grade school years. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. So, while we often had a fairly recent make of car, it was probably a Plymouth or a Chevy. I remember once being called chromeless because it was probably a dumbed-down car, not a souped-up one. I remember Tim asking Dad if we could buy a Cadillac. By the time Tim was all grown up, Dad said, "Well, maybe, Tim, we can afford a 1927 model now." By that time, Tim was looking at newer and better models of cars to own. When it was time for Tim to go to high school, he decided to go to Mount Ellis Academy in Bozeman, Montana. But he didn't realize what a homebody he was. Mom and Dad went to see him one weekend, sometime before Thanksgiving vacation. As they left, they gave him a bus ticket to come home for Thanksgiving. When they got back to Seattle, Tim was already there. He beat him home. He was just too lonesome for home to wait for Thanksgiving. When it came time to go to college, Mom and Dad bought a home in College Place so he could live at home and go to school. After a few months there, Tim decided to join the Army and tried out for the Green Beret. Tim had quite a few experiences in the Army that only he could tell you about. One I heard was that one day, while he was training to parachute out of an airplane, his unit received orders that they could only open when they were on the ground after their jump. They were wondering where they were going as they sat there in the plane, and it seemed to take so long. After their jump, they opened their orders, and it said, "Welcome to Brazil." Eventually, Tim was shipped out to Vietnam. While there, he was wounded. After he had gotten all his troops into the helicopter, a grenade went off beside him, and as he was getting into the helicopter. His radio pack took much of the grenade, but some shrapnel hit his head and affected his hearing. And while you won't see many scars on the outside, Tim, like many other combat soldiers, has some scars on the inside that are harder to heal. After the Army, Tim finished his college experience. Tim always loved children, even when he was 8, 9, and 10 years old. If there were little children at a gathering, he would play with them and keep them entertained. So, when he had children of his own, he always loved doing things with them. When his family split apart and moved to Illinois, he left Seattle and found a job in Memphis, Tennessee, so he could be near his children and see them as often as possible. He loves spending time with his boys, who are grown up now, and with their children. He is always bragging about his children and grandchildren. This is what I can tell you in a short time about my brother Tim. We always thought of him as a very special blessing that God gave us. My brother Jim and I were always just a little jealous. Not really badly jealous, but in a kind of a good way. When Dad would say, "When Sandra and Jim were born, we had to take what we got. But when we got Tim, we picked just the one that we wanted." When we were young, he was Tim and I was Sandy. But now that we are old, he is brother and I am sister. Thank you, Tim, for being such a wonderful brother. And now I wish you a very happy and blessed 70 years old. Welcome to the 70s, brother. Every year from now on is an added blessing. Love you, brother, your sister.